you for coming out early this morning. A little brisk, but we're well on our way in March to spring. And everybody's celebratory, so thank you again for coming out and being part of this very important conversation. We like to do 2 of these a year officially, and sometimes there's some unofficial events if we can get away with them. But in the spring and the winter, mid-session around that time, right during the town meeting time, we like to bring our senators and our representatives together to talk to all of you, many of you business owners, business leaders, and nonprofit leaders. And so we do that in the spring, early spring, and then in the fall, and we'll be up in the North Shire for this one this year. We'll invite the Vermont Chamber down, Amy Spear and her team, to talk a little bit more about what are we heading into in terms of 2027, and they are great at kind of getting more of a business economic spin to it. So that's kind of the layout of the 2 events today. I do want to speed us along. The format for today, Erica's just going to share a couple programmings. We are going to hear from our host just about this beautiful building that, I think a lot of us are like, oh, that building in the back of the Elks. And so we want Charlie to talk about that for a minute. And then we're going to pass it along to our senators and reps. I am going to encourage our senators and representatives to try to keep it to 5 minutes. We would like you to introduce your committee. In the southern belt of Bennington, sometimes we don't know all that's going on up in Montpelier, and sometimes even the process and the format. So I think it's very important for you to share the committees you're on, the focus points that you often are in charge of, and then maybe some anecdotal or key insights that you want to share. We'll go through all our senators and reps this morning. We usually give us about 30 to 40 minutes left, and that's when all of you can have your Q&A. We find that this tends to be pretty casual. Nice breakfast out here, some coffee, is a conversation with the people that you're putting up at the State House. And so that's where we'll end, and it'll end around 10:30. Sound like a good plan for everybody. So I do want to pass it off to Erica. She's just going to give us a little bit of update about the chamber events, and then pass it off to Charlie and the Elks.
Thank you, Matt. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Elks team, for this beautiful breakfast put out for us this morning. So just very quickly, a few things we have going on. The first one actually is not ours, but it's Louise, SYP. It's March 14th, and it is the SYP Pub Crawl. So if you want to enjoy some St. Patty's Day fun with a bunch of people, check in with Louise and you can get more information on that. On March 31st, Matt and I are taking our show on the road with just Ask Matt and Erica. It's going to be very casual. We're going to have it at different breakfast places in town, grab a cup of coffee, ask us about membership, ask us about programming, whatever, discuss what's going on with your business or what you would like some help with. It's going to be really laid back. So that's happening March 31st, 8:30 to 10 at the Angry Egg 2 on Main Street. And then at the beginning of April, we're going to have a power hour with Treasurer Mike Hychek. And he's going to talk to us about the Vermont Saves program and what you need to know about it, what you should be doing to follow it, where it is right now. And it's by Zoom, Facebook Live, so you don't have to leave your desk. Just tune in, join us, and check that out. April 9th, we have a networking night up at Hildene. And then April 23rd, we're going to do professional headshots. Location hasn't been determined yet, but we are working with one of our members, the BBB, so you can have professional headshots done free of charge. Trying to find a nice location. Maybe flowers will be out by then, so hopefully. And then looking ahead to May 13th, our Women in Leadership Luncheon. So tickets will go on sale soon for that, and that's what we have coming up. All right, thank you guys.
All right, Charlie and Elks, thank you so much for hosting us. You want to just give us some general overview of the space that we're in, and also how what's going on with the Elks and how to become an Elk.
My name is Charlie Boyle, and I'm representing the Elks. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Elks Carriage Barn. This is a very popular place, and for events such as this, and it's available for rent if people would be interested. We have a much larger facility in the main hall. This will hold 60, 70 comfortably over there, maybe up to 200. But I like to say just a couple words about the Elks. The Elks were formed in 1858 in New York City. This lodge was chartered in 1900, so we're celebrating 126 years. And we've been at this location since 1970. And the Elks are committed to make a difference in their communities. And so that's what we try to do. We support all kinds of activities for youth, whether it's sports, whatever, veterans programs. We have veterans programs going on all the time. The hospital, everything. The Elks is there supporting it. As a matter of fact, there's a bit of trivia. Who is the second largest producer of scholarships for students in the United States of America? The Elks. You know who the first one is? You're paying it. The United States government.
Thank you.
And we have about 900 members in this lodge. It's very active. Things going on all the time. And the nice thing about it is money goes to charity. Money goes to charity, scholarships, what have you. So I'd like to welcome everybody here. And, as you're walking around, feel free to just walk out the back. The restrooms, beautiful kitchen. This gets rehabbed every few years. The last time it was done in the period of 2015 to 2019. People are just interested in history. On the wall over there is the grand opening in 1945 when the Elks acquired this property. So anyway, welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to have you and nice to meet everybody. Thank you.
All right, so we are going to go around. I do want to first acknowledge every senator and representative in the building first, and then I'm going to start off with Senator Bongartz, if that's okay, Seth. But first, I do want to recognize Representative Durfee, Representative Morrissey, Representative Pesno, Representative Greer, Representative Corcoran, Representative Nigro, Representative Cooper, and obviously Senator Bongartz as well. Did I miss any of our representatives? Yeah, that's 10 years on the job right there. I remember my first one. Art Whitman and Ryan Campion held my hand. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining. We know you have a very busy schedule. So thank you for dedicating some of your time this morning. Senator Bongartz, I want to start off with you. Just give an update on your committee, what's going on, what's the temperature up in Montpelier, and then we'll go over to Representative Pesno.
Hi, everybody. So I want to first say that Rob Punkett has one of those problems called a day job, and so he's a deputy state's attorney, and he had to be in the office today, so he couldn't be. I'm on in the Senate. You serve on two committees. You have a morning committee and an afternoon committee. So it's kind of a challenge because you have half as much time to focus as members do in the House. So a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times, the House first works on some of the big bills, and then they come over in the Senate because they have half as much time. Would be more of a review and tweaks. That's not universally true, but that's kind of what happens sometimes, especially with the big bill. So I serve in the Natural Resources Committee in the morning, and just very quick, we did one thing that's just kind of fun. We passed out the plug-in solar bill, which is it's also called balcony solar, where they're little portable, inexpensive solar arrays that you can get either hang from your balcony or put on your lawn, and they just simply plug in. And it doesn't quite work this way, but effectively it turns the meter backwards a little bit as you use it. So you get, it's people who are renters or don't have a lot of money and can't afford to buy the big solar arrays can at least be involved a little bit. It's not a game changer, but it's a big thing in Europe, and you may have read about it, and it's probably going to catch on here. The main thing is just to really quickly recount on housing. For the last 5 years, we have, partially with ARPA money, we've put hundreds of millions of dollars into infrastructure, sewer, water systems, mobile home parks to help mobile home parks modernize, and VGIP program to help people bring former apartments back online, and then just a lot of money into housing. And the story here very quickly is that it's working. The trend line for housing is going in the right direction for the first time in a long time in Vermont. And that's really encouraging. I've seen graphs, and we're not where we need to be by a long shot with all the challenges of cost and workforce, but it's headed in the right direction. So, and in my afternoon committee is I'm chair of the education committee, and that becomes a really complicated. It's hard to get into, especially in 2 minutes. But let's just back up a little bit and remember the reason that the governor proposed the major changes that he's proposed for education is that we have an unsustainable system right now. We're seeing double-digit increases across the state, year in and year out. It's not, by the way, I don't want to blame anybody for that because it's actually really complicated, all the reasons for that. But that's happening and it's not sustainable. People can't pay their property taxes. So, and what we've been doing is, because we've had some surplus money, we've been buying down the rate to make the rate be artificially lower for taxpayers. The problem is that every year you do that, you have to make that up again the next year, plus the next year. So that is really, that's a really unsustainable model. And the Joint Fiscal Office just released its preliminary, but close enough, report saying that effectively it'll cost about $500 million, $450 to $500 million, to keep the rate of increase at 5% for the next 3 years. That's not going to happen. We don't have the money. And in the meantime, all those dollars that we're using to buy down the rate artificially, we're not able to put into housing, health care, primary care, all the things, all the other pressing needs that Vermont has. So the foundation formula, the system we have now is so Byzantine, nobody understands it. And it also, as I say about it, it's also ingenious because in a way nobody's responsible. And when nobody's responsible, things tend not to end well. And so the foundation formula that the governor has proposed, and I think is the model that we have to get to, will hold down the rate of increase because the legislature will actually be responsible for the multiplier put in every year. And it's actually got a fixed multiplier. You can call it, it's not CPI, it's a different indices, but call it CPI. So that will contain the rate of increases in school spending, which will actually hopefully bend the cost curve and get to the point that people can actually pay their property taxes. So, yeah, I think I've gone over our time. But it's really complicated, but I think as I said last night at the school meeting, there are legislators who are in a little bit of la-la land about this, that, we didn't have a tax revolt last year, therefore we don't really need to do anything. That's not true. That's going to catch up with us fast. We need to do something to bring that rate of increase in health, but also in property taxes for funding schools. And there's competing proposals. It's really complicated. There's an element of rural Vermont versus urban Vermont going on here, and trying to find a solution that will get us to the point that we have a system upon which we can put the foundation formula, but do it in a way that recognizes the difference in rural and urban Vermont. So help us with that. Thanks.
Thank you. And again, we'll have, once we get to everybody, we'll allow Senator Bongart's to talk. With our representatives, please just introduce also where you're from. We are serving a regional audience here. Next up, we have Representative Sandy Baseman, and discuss your committees and what you find interesting so far with this session.
Well, my name is Sandy Kinsall. We don't sound like Bennington case notes. I'm from Dorset. I serve Bennington, Rutland 1, which is Canby, Dorset, Lincoln Grove, Peru, and Mount Tabor. I serve on government operations and military affairs. retired town clerk with Dorset. After 21 years, I retired in December. So my committee basically does town charters, anything to do with local municipal government, and also military affairs. This was my first term. I started last January, and a year ago January, and one of the things that we finally passed after 22 years, I believe, was not taxing military retirement after 22 years of being on the law. So that was didn't get all that we wanted, but it's a start. And we've got a couple bills in the House now regarding some military procedures, disabled veterans parking plates. There's a lot of disabled veterans that don't meet the handicap sticker that we currently have with the wheelchair, but have other disabilities. So we're trying to get a Vermont DV license plate to help those. We're also just passed a bill out of the House to allow military wives, because they get transferred so many times throughout their spouses or husbands' careers, or husbands as well, to be able to get government jobs at the top of the list instead of starting at the bottom when there's openings in government positions. So that's on the floor as well. We just passed a charter change from town of Bennington regarding the hiring contract with the town manager. We've done one for Essex and Randolph. We have that on the table now. We have one for Burlington. So we're constantly busy with charter changes, keeps us quite busy. But we also deal with other things, like anything that has to do with taxation to the town and municipalities. So this, like I said, this is my second half of my term. It's quite amazing. I love it, but it's long and arduous, and sometimes you're not quite sure where the common sense is falling into place with some of the stuff that gets proposed. And I give credit to, we're very fortunate in Bennington County that we have Seth on the Education Committee in the Senate and Rob Hunter from Manchester on the Education Committee in the House. Because without those two fighting for our schools in this area, I really believe the north half of the state doesn't get it. And so it's, like I said, it's very interesting, and hope to return next year. Hopefully.
Representative Morrissey.
Good morning, everyone. I am Mary Morrissey. I've served in the Vermont State Legislature in the House of Representatives for 30 years. Seth and I have talked a little bit about, or he's heard me talk about, Act 60 when I first went in 30 years ago, and the discussion of the change in education reminds me so much of 30 years ago, because it was so complicated that you couldn't even explain it. I remember them sending us home at a town meeting like this to go talk to our constituents, and not one of us could explain because it was so complicated. I didn't vote for it then because I'm someone who, if I can't answer the questions or get the information on a piece of legislation that I can't explain to my constituents, I'm usually like, we've got to put a halt here for a minute so that we can figure out what we're doing. So here we are back on the track of looking to redo education, look to fund that is also promote the education in our state. Anyway, I sit on institutions and corrections, which is deals with the institutions that deals with buildings and across the state that we're responsible for. Here in Bennington, and I sit on the committee with a couple of the projects that we work on is like the monument, which is a huge issue with some of the challenges that the monument is presently having. We're not sure how that move, I don't know that we put one in place to get us to the planning process of it, but we really need to look at what we can do to get that monument open, because right now, with the issues of the cleanup, it's not likely that we will be open again once we go into the top to the tourism.
And I think what's safe to say, we're not online covering the top. An inside joke, but I'm doing that.
Well, the concern is with the process is that a number is thrown out as to $40 million to get it back up and running. And then I asked the question, how did you come to that number? Because they had not decided what needed to be done with that $40 million figure. So we had colleagues say, "Oh, just tear it down, or do something else." It is the second most visited other than the State House. It is visited and brings tourism to our state. The other part of our community is elections, and we're dealing with all types of bills and what our facilities should look like as far as for the household folks, bringing back folks from out of state have had to because of the numbers that we had to do something in another state. But anyway, I think this year for me and for the other legislators, it would be safe to say, probably the top topics are the education and how we get there. Healthcare goes right along with it. And for me, it's concerning that we as a small state have the highest or the second highest student population of student costs, the student cost per people, and yet our numbers as far as students has dropped dramatically. And the one problem for me is that many of our schools are not meeting basic standards. That's a huge so that and there is one of my concerns going forward with education reform. We've got to highlight how we can help teach our students in a way that they can see. Also, we are the highest, we pay the highest for our health care insurances across the state country as well. That's very concerning because the two of them are some of our largest projects. One other thing that I would like us to really work hard on is with the housing in the other issues that we need to
Representative Corcoran.
Bank doesn't give up. Tim Corcoran, and I serve on the House Transportation Committee. I have the luxury of serving on that committee for 24 years, so I'm very happy with that. And we typically deal with two bills. We have a transportation budget, we start on that, and the Senate deals with the miscellaneous B&B bill. They're wrapping that up, we're wrapping up the two bills, so we'll swap those. But I just wanted to sort of paint a picture of where we are financially with our transportation budget. Because it's not rosy. You would think it would be. Our total budget this year for the FY27 budget is a little north of $900 million. It's a lot of money. But when you start breaking it down and you parcel it out for the payrolls and projects that are actually being done, it's not good. But we have an emergency board meets twice a year, once in January, once in July, and they sort of true up our numbers of where we are financially. In this past July, transportation revenue got downgraded by $7.5 million, which isn't a good thing. And in order to accomplish that, there's roughly 31 AOT employees that had to get let go, which is, not a good thing. And then the rest of it was delayed projects. And that's just for the FY26 budget. And then again, this January, a month ago, it got downgraded another $1.5 million. So we're not on a good track. And even to further that, our revenues are, they come in usually, our January numbers will come in like 2 or 3 weeks into February. So we received our actual revenues for January, and those are down by roughly $400,000 to $500,000. So, needless to say, if you look at our annual growth in transportation revenues in the next 4 or 5 years, it's at a 1.4, 1.5% growth. Problem is the cost of construction is at 34. So those aren't lining up. We're continuing to tread water. We're losing. So how to correct that? It's tough. One of the things that the governor put on the table is that the purchase and use tax, a third of that goes to to the education, which is roughly $45 to $50 million that they receive. The government says, well, that should go back to transportation. Transportation committee, I'm all for it. But the problem is that could affect your property taxes. I think people are, property taxes are too high. So it's a balancing act. He has a 5-year plan to draw down that $50 million over 5 years to make the transportation budget whole. But even with that, we're still need to find a revenue source that is growing. For example, if you look at our gas tax revenue, the peak was probably in the early 2000s, and if you go to today, we're selling 70 million less gallons of fuel, which is great for the economy, but it's not good for our bottom line. So again, how do you make up those revenues? We're trying to capture a little bit as the industry grows in electric vehicles. We got flack for this, but we put on an $89 surcharge for electric vehicles. People weren't happy with that. So now we're going to actually transition next year to MBUF, miles-based user fee. So it's going to be based on the actual miles that somebody drives. But with that, at $89 is probably going to look like a good deal, because I think most vehicles are probably going to be in the 120, 130, 40 range. So we're trying to, recoup money there.
Tim, is that on both gas and
electric vehicles or?
No, just electric vehicles, yes.
And then the gas, the left.
Yeah, the gas is not a part of that. This is just pure, not even hybrid, it's just pure electric vehicles. And it's, you know, it's a way that, you know, generates some money, but, you know, there are some other options that are being floated around. And now in Bennington, we tried to do a local option tax. And I don't recall that doing too well. But there is a proponent that the Senate and I think the House is starting to work at is currently our local option allows us to go up to, at a penny, to go up to 7%. We wanted to go to 8% for the purpose of funding local projects to go back to the towns. The split wouldn't be the same because under the local option tax now it's 75% goes back and the rest goes to a private fund in the state. This would be a 50-50 split, which is probably not too appealing to the towns that would want to implement that. So, you know, we are trying to, you know, think out of the box, you know. I don't want to say a show of hands, but I mean, who would be in favor of putting an index on gas tax to sort of keep up, you know, with that? And, you know, there's always a round of reason not to do things. You know, another thing was thrown out, and I don't think it really has much traction, but putting a charge on deliveries, you know, from the Amazon delivery, in fact, they beat up quite a bit of the roads. And then you get to the point where that might affect the elderly population, because that's the only way to, you know, get the packages. So it's hard. So we're, you know, that's one of our main focuses is trying to figure out how we can make our budget whole and sustainable to fund, you know, our projects. Our paving, they said we need to fund 300 miles a year to keep on track without losing the effectiveness of the roads. This year we're roughly paving 145 million. Not good. The municipal grants that the towns apply for every year, we're funding a third of those requests. So we just have a lot of work to do, and you know, potentially come up with another revenue source. So, you know, that's you know, what we're dealing with is a 33 million gap in the FY27 budget, which again was predicated off another 31 employees being let go, some maneuvering, say smoke and mirrors, some budget maneuvering that drew down some federal money that we turned in the state to sort of offset that money. So there's really no good answers from that standpoint. But outside of that, you know, there's you know a couple issues, you know, for the DMV bill that that are going to be coming our way next week, and one of them is car inspections. There's been a lot of feedback on that, whether or not we should just get rid of them, have them every other year. So I know the Senate, I think, has wrapped up their version of it. I think they want to take a little bit of a longer look at it. You know, it's going to be coming over our side probably a week or two when we get back. And, you know, we're going to have to make the decision if that's why. Should we just get rid of them, or should it be every other year? And again, if we do get rid of them, that's a loss of $4 million. So it's not helping the overall projection of where we want to go. So, you know, those are the, you know, the two, you know, biggest things that, you know, we're dealing with right now. So, of course, we have to do around revenue. So, talk about first procedures for the governor. That was all my notes that I just sort of wanted to high level, you know, talk about. I guess I'll leave it at that. Happy to ask any questions.
Representative Nigro.
Hi there, Mike Nigro, Bennington District 5. I sit on the Appropriations Committee, so we focus on the state budget. And the The question I get most frequently is usually related to the mustache. I know it's getting mixed reviews. I don't know how long it's going to last.
It's going to be a fundraiser.
All right.
You can grow hair, buddy.
All right, I think probably a lot of folks have heard what a challenging budgetary environment we're in right now and what a difficult budget year it is for Vermont, and it's true. And as we heard a little bit in transportation, across the board, we're seeing a slowdown in revenues. So we are seeing some downgrades and some starting to feel the decline in revenue. We're also having declines in federal money coming into the state. Some of that's just the expiring large influx of money from the pandemic. So even beyond that, other places that the federal government is simply tightening expenditures and not sending much to the state. And some of that hasn't even hit us yet. There are going to be changes in Medicaid that are going to be having big impacts in several years out from now, but things we need to start thinking about now. So it is a very challenging fiscal year. I guess staying kind of high level, I think every committee is everybody brings a different perspective to the table. We spend a lot of time in my committee talking about fiscal approach and just the philosophy around building a state budget. And there are some folks that sit at my table that talk about what do Vermonters need right now? What do we need to do right now for Vermonters? Which is important, and I'm really glad they asked those questions. And that sounds like good campaign stuff, too. I should say that on a speech. But I'll be honest, my role, I feel like on this committee, is to take a little bit of a different approach, which is I frequently am asking the question, what is this going to mean for Vermont down the road? I have kind of a naturally long-range approach. To some degree, I say, as a small business owner, maybe I hate spending, but I'm okay investing. And that's how I feel. And I think Vermont has spent frequently, but has struggled with investing. And we've had a lot of, there's a lot of examples of that. We pour every year an enormous amount of money into our state employee and teacher pensions because we weren't funding them properly in the past. So today, when people say, why can't we start this program? Why don't we have more money for housing? Well, because we pay for our past mistakes. So every day in committee, these are the things that I'm asking. I think what Tim's talking about with transportation, every delayed bridge project is something we are that's a future debt we are going to have to pay. So it's not the sexiest topic in state government, roads. It's really important. It's a very important topic. Another one that I'm really focused on right now is after the state stopped assisting with building schools throughout the state, we've incurred this backlog of aging schools. And right now the estimate to replace Vermont schools is $6 billion. The money we've set aside for that at this point is zero. So it is something, there's proposals, I have ideas around, but it's something I'm very focused on is, trying to think about a long range. It's not something I think government is naturally good at, but that I think we're at a point where it's very important that we are taking a long range approach to our state budget. I'm not going to go into numbers, but I will say if anybody has questions, wants to reach out to me at any point, I'm happy to get into specifics on any part of the budget. I actually love to do it. But I will have to leave just a few minutes early. I just wanted to mention that now. I'll speak that at a point.
Senator Cooper.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Nice to meet you. So it's very nice to see you all. I'm Jonathan Cooper, live in Pownell, representing the Bennington 1 district, and that's most of Pownell, and includes Woodford, Reedsboro, Searsburg, Sanford. They're all meeting tonight at town meetings. They kick off in a 90-minute window. So I have this Yankee cannonball circuit I have to go on to get around it all, and we'll do it. So I'm on the House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. So a lot of your concerns come through to our committee as our concerns. But despite the name Commerce and Economic Development, we also treat consumer protection, another major part of our organization, our committee's activities. And so we spend a lot of time in consumer protection looking out for people who are victims of coerced debt, for example. Looking for people who are perhaps victims of suspicious transactions like frauds, and trying to find ways to help protect people before they lose something that's hard to get back. But we've had some interesting work over the last year and a half. And so this is my first term, so just like a few others that you've heard from, sort of in the first half, the last half of my first session. And last year we had a convention center, sort of a task force that came together to look at adding a convention center someplace in Burlington. Now, what does that have to do with us? One of the strongest proponents we've heard from is the captive insurance industry, another entity that is within Commerce and Economic Development's remit. And Church Insurance, here in Bennington, not far from us, is one of the largest voices in that industry within our state. So that's a rare area where Vermont has a competitive advantage in a business environment. And that's something that we want to press. Because if you don't press your competitive advantage, you will lose it. And we've seen that time and again in all kinds of industries throughout history, including where I grew up, in eastern Massachusetts, where digital and Wang Computer labs that had they were the Silicon Valley before Silicon Valley. And my dad worked at one of them, and we lost it. And that affected many, many families all across greater Boston, including mine. So it's important to us for Vermont to keep what it has, to grow what its successes are. I like to think that Commerce and Economic Development is a good place to do that. One of the things I'm most proud of for this session is the twins who were born on December 21st, Julie and Natalie Cooper, came into the world healthy and happy, and the rest of us are tired. But it's meant an interesting balance of being at home, being able to do committee work remotely, and realizing just how inadequate that is as an elected official. At one point I was asking a question of the Deputy Attorney General, and during a Zoom meeting, a committee meeting, and I realized I'm asking a hallway question, but I don't have a hallway to ask it. And so it's nice to be able to get back up to Montpelier. They'll be there full time on the back end of town meeting week now that the babies are a little over 2 months old and we have things sort of falling back into place. But one of the things I'm proudest of for this session has been, I was up there one day a week from the beginning of the session on Fridays. Friday is when the Caucus for Vermont's Economy meets. And that's a caucus that I helped to launch with 4 other legislators, Democrats and Republicans, to talk about something that doesn't get talked about in the State House very often, and that's economic development. And I'm in a position to sort of say that for sure because I'm on a committee that talks about economic development, and it doesn't come up all that often. I'm in a party that has its priorities, and economic development doesn't come up that often. And it bugs me. I work at the Regional Planning Commission here in Bennington in community and economic development. So this is my life's work, and it's my elected work. And one of the things that's been really gratifying is that when we opened that door up, we reserved that room Fridays at noon, people came. And it wasn't just people in Burlington. It's some people who are in this room. And that's been very meaningful. And one of the things that the State Chamber of Commerce told us was that there will be a trust gap, and it will take a while because it hasn't been a conversation in the Capitol. And that's fine with me, because any politician who wants to hurry up and be trusted, it's not going to work out too well. So the goal of this is to give it staying power, for us to listen to what business owners have to say, what permitting reform advocates have to say, and to let that be heard by politicians throughout the state capitol. And we found that that is working. It's letting us have conversations that we then see bills that weren't getting airtime in other committees are getting some airtime. And it's the very first incremental steps. But I believe, because I'm an optimist, because I work in economic development, where you have to be an optimist, that this is going to build and continue on. We had great attendance from legislators, from advocates, and that's something that I'm really proud of, and I look to build on. In the next session is, like we've heard, we have an election coming up, and I'm looking forward to the challenge and for the opportunity to continue to serve, because it has been the most meaningful experience of my life. Living here has given us some of the hardest news and some of the happiest news and some of the most fulfilling work, and I'm grateful for all of it, and thank you all for being here this morning.
last but not least, we'll go to Representative Greer, and then we'll have questions.
Right. Good morning, everybody. I'm David Durfee. I live in Shaftesbury and represent Sunderland and Glastonbury as well, part of Sunderland. I've served in the House for 8 years, this is my 8th year, and I'm currently chairing the Committee on Agriculture, Food, and Forestry. And given that agriculture is one of the larger sectors of the economy, it feels like it's a good place to be. We don't have a big agriculture economy here in Bennington County, but as you go further north, if you've been up as far as the border, in fact, you'll see how much dairy impacts the landscape. We still have a pretty strong dairy industry, although it's becoming more and more consolidated as years go by. So rather than having lots of farms with 40 or 50 or 100 cows, now we've got fewer farms, but they tend to have 1,000, 1,500, 2,500 milking cows. And we don't see that here in Bennington, but it's not at all unusual along northern Lake Champlain and then across the border. And what has become news to many of us, I think, is that those farms survive on immigrant labor. So specifically, undocumented folks who are working here without authorization to be doing that work. And we had some testimony the other day. There are maybe 800 or 1,000 workers from Mexico or Central America. And they're here doing that work after we all understand what it takes to get here from wherever they've come from. Nobody in Vermont is willing to do that work. And if there were, the farmers would be hiring them. But nobody's willing to do that work. It's not unique to Vermont. This is the situation all over the country. So back in the spring, when ICE, or possibly it was Border Patrol, raided a farm right along the border, there was a lot of concern. What does this mean for the dairy industry? What does it mean for Vermont's economy? That sector would collapse almost instantly if the administration, the federal administration's stated goal of removing everybody who wasn't here with proper authorization, if that were to take effect. So we haven't seen those raids continue, and I think it's because even at the president's level, there's an understanding that the economy nationwide would be in big trouble. We would have trouble feeding ourselves collectively if we didn't have those workers. The concern now, though, is even if they aren't being physically deported, that we are seeing some people who are taking the advice or the suggestion to self-deport. So we're trying to keep an eye on that. We have services available. The state has services available to help people access health care, which they're entitled to in many cases. Support for their children in schools. Just making sure that while they're living in the shadows, because that's the only place they feel comfortable, that they are still being supported. So it's a human issue. It's also an economic issue, and one that's important to us. I wanted to just say a word or two about education. I don't have anybody here from the House Education Committee. I did serve previously on Ways and Means, and then before I was elected, I was on the school board with Sean Murray. And I think about this a lot. We are on the cusp of doing something big, and I think it's important that we do something big because, as has been stated, we spend more than almost any other state per student on education. And while we can be proud that we support education, we want to be sure that we're doing so efficiently, making the best use of those taxpayer dollars. Bearing in mind that anything that we're asking taxpayers to spend on education means it's not available to be spent on all the other things that we feel are important. We here in Bennington County do not spend the second highest in the country. In other words, across the state of Vermont, as you imagine, there's a range. And in other communities, they're spending twice as much as some communities in Vermont. And we here in Bennington, at least in southern Bennington County, are down towards the bottom. Act 60, which I mean, some people will remember, it was almost 30 years ago that it went into effect, has been financially tremendously helpful. And I think we shouldn't lose sight of that fact. It's been brought in tens of millions of dollars into our school systems that wouldn't be here otherwise. We are now at a point where the balance of money coming in and what we're asking our local taxpayers to do is going to start to shift. And I think you're going to see that on your tax bill in November, or whenever you get your tax bill, depending on the community. It's already happened in other parts of the state, and that's why we're having this statewide conversation, because in some communities, tax bills have just gone out of control. I'm talking about the school tax fees, not the local tax fees. So this is, I think it's important that we not lose sight of that fact. And this is interesting politically because the governor, the Republican governor, and the Democratic leaders of the House and Senate are supportive of doing something, where we're seeing the opposition primarily is from communities that I think don't want to be told that they're going to have to spend less than they're currently spending. So those communities that are way out on the edge. So anyway, I'm sure I have another 5 minutes. Thank you.
I always forget you guys want us to do a speech here, so I never come prepared.
That's why I put you last, so you can get
Hey,
ready.
thank you. Yeah. Well, I'll keep this short and sweet. I'm trying to think what Mary did not touch on in our committee. On the institution side, I think the one thing that we're doing is prepping for the wastewater facility here in Bennington by making sure that that's fully funded for the coming year, so that when we hopefully get into next year and we all vote on that bond vote in Bennington, North Bennington, just remember to vote yes on that. We have the money for that all secured. One thing that's kind of overlapping with Tim's committee is we have a non-driver's ID bill in the corrections side of our committee right now, which I don't think we realize the gravity around people needing identification and documents once they're in, or once they're out of incarceration, being able to access, certain things like trying to rent, trying to get a job, as it relates to the economy, and just trying to have that dignity in their life once they're trying to get back on their feet. So that's one thing that we've been working on. We've been working on a lot of programs for connecting families and making sure that they're also, still connected to their loved ones who are incarcerated, because that has a big impact on the broader community. So corrections does, in a strange way, I guess, touch the, the commerce, side of things and the, what the chambers after. In terms of just other bills, oh gosh, Jonathan, you did not touch on that banking bill, but there was a lot of language that you guys put in there on cryptocurrency that kind of related to some stuff that I was working on, so thank you for that. And then other than that, I can't think of much else that everyone else has already touched on. So I think that was the shortest by far. So thanks.
Thank you, Representative Greer. And so we've got about 20 minutes left. Obviously, I think some of these representatives and senators may stick around later if you want to do some, Dr. would call it, hallway health. But we do want to open it up for your questions. What you've heard from around the county and around this room, the various things that have been touched upon, especially with this session. So now it's your turn. We kind of frame up if you want to direct it towards a specific representative who's on a committee, great. But if you just want to ask a question, facilitate that as well. So, Jen Hoffman, thank you for always being one of my first. Bob?
Thank you all so much for your reports. It's really wonderful to hear firsthand what's going on. I read the reports that David Durfee sends to me as a Shasbury resident, so I appreciate those very much. The thing that fires me up the most is what Jonathan Cooper said. I sit on the Vermont Association of Realtors Government Affairs Committee. We meet every week during the session, every other week when we're not. And it's very clear to us, like this is the drum that we beat every single week, is where the heck is economic development? That you are, as a state government, expecting property owners to fund basically everything that's happening in education. And that is not sustainable. We all know that. I I'm really scared to hear about what's happening with transportation. Thank you, Tim, for all of that as well. Did not think about the impact of EVs on our budget, because they still need to drive on safe roads too, right? So that makes sense to me. I would not have been supportive of a special tax for those vehicles until I heard that explanation. So that really colors it for me. But whether we have a convention center or we don't, or we're going to totally revamp Act 60 and come up with a new funding formula, if we have more businesses here in the state of Vermont paying taxes, creating jobs, hopefully making more illegals legal, right, so that they can be here with paperwork and not have to live in the shadows, that is terrifying, then all of these problems could be solved. So thank you for creating a caucus to focus on economic development, because to me that is the baseline of what would solve all of these problems. Thank you.
Jen, then we've got Jose, and then all right. So Jose.
I will echo some of that. I actually want to testify in front of the economic development. I own 2 businesses in the state, and Jose Oliver for Bennington and Oliver Subaru and Rutland Lawn. I've done business mostly all over New England, and I gotta tell you, I said this comment in the Economic Development Committee. We make Massachusetts look like Texas. This is probably the most expensive and the hardest state to do business with. And I'll just give you an example. I'm building a 34,000 square foot facility at Subaru that was supposed to be an $8 million project, and now it's a $12 million project. And I have spent $1 million in 3 years in permitting to get to here. The Agency of Natural Resources telling me that I got to move 100-year-old trees because they won't give me a permit. I don't do that. Or lose parking to build a retention pond to treat water that runs off the highway. So the fallacy that we have in this state is that we want zero impact on the environment and the natural resources and anything around, but we also want business and we want development. And I go to a lot of these things when I go to the State House a lot, and I hear a lot of, well, we're going to do this, or we're going to loan money at 1% to build housing, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do that, but we're not fixing the problem. Because we're taking money, taxpayer money, to loan it at a below market rate without addressing the cost of construction, the cost of permitting. An agency, I love clean water, clean air, clean everything. I have 30 acres, I'm an outdoorsman, I snowboard with my kids every weekend. I love all that stuff, right? But we can't have a department that has a political agenda permitting things for businesses to come here. Tell me what business is going to come into the state and invest. I have to do it because I live here and I don't want to move. But who is going to come into the state and go through a regulatory process and spend millions of dollars in engineering and architecture firms to go through a process that is going to take 3 years without a guarantee that I'm going to get a permit to be able to put a business here? And then if I do, the property taxes are going to kill me, the payroll taxes are going to kill me, the healthcare cost is going to be significantly higher than any other state in New England. How are we going to get rid of all this stuff? What I think us as business owners, the most frightening thing to a business owner or a realtor or an insurance agent or anybody is negative net migration and declining population. And we have both. We are last in economic development. And we continue to talk about, well, this legislation and that legislation and this, and we're going to credit the permitting fees, but we're not going to address the fact that Act 250 is completely broken, and it was a well-intended legislation back in the day, but it doesn't work today. So we can, and guess what? You can continue to do all these programs, and we're going to build some housing, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do all of this stuff. But without more people and without more business, it's going to continue to be on the backs of the property owners and the businesses to be able to fund all this stuff that we want to fund. And then you're not going to have anybody here, because at some point it's going to become unsustainable, right? My property taxes here in Bennington have gone up to $15,000. So when Matt comes over and says, hey, Jose, I need you to support Garlictown, or I need you to support this, or I have a school that needs codes, or I have a child that needs a season pass because the parents can't afford it and they really like snowboarding. That's 15 grand that I can deploy into my community that I do all the time. because everything just keeps going up and up and up and up because we don't address the actual issue that we are way over-regulated, way overtaxed, and you're going to have zero business coming into the state if we continue to just put patches and put legislation on top of legislation. That doesn't work. We have to fix what the problem is instead of taking our hard-earned money to credit builders and give them 1% interest loans because our system is completely broken. Fix the system first. Deregulate. Get rid of some of the stuff that doesn't make any sense. And for God's sake, we are Vermont. We're not California or Washington. We don't have the population, the climate, the economic engine. We don't have any of that stuff. We have to do things that make sense for us in this state, not what makes sense everywhere else in the country. Or we're going to have nobody live here. And I have 3 children. I want to raise them here. I love living here. But it's going to become unaffordable for most people if we continue along the path that we're in. This is not Republican, this is not Democrat, this is not nothing. This makes all the sense in the world, right? I'm an immigrant. I came to this country with literally $70 in cash in my pocket. And I have built a career and a life here. And I've been blessed. It's the best country in the world, but we can't continue in this state in the way that we are. Thank you.
Senator Morrissey.
I just wanted to reference and answer or make a comment as to what you just said, because within the last 2 weeks, it has come out that Vermont, again, and these are not numbers and issues to be proud of. We have the most in the country of people leaving our state because of those very reasons. The regulation, the taxes, an economy that doesn't support what we need to be doing here. And, I would love to be here being positive on all the different issues. But we can't be one thing without always looking at the effect of what it is for other things. Tim talked about the transportation. We've got, it's great having a wonderful environment, but we've got 8 electric buses that were purchased for over $8 billion that have not been able to be used.
They'll catch on fire if you try to
Right,
burn it.
and you can't even put them in the building to charge them if they didn't work during the winter. We've got to look at what we're doing.
To be clear, those were a default battery. They're not capable of doing it. They're going to be replaced. So your point is
Can I make a comment on that, right?
One comment.
Yeah, I sell cars for a living. I don't care if the customer wants a Model A or a bicycle or a tricycle or a diesel car or an electric car. It doesn't matter. We live in a climate where somebody that drives an electric car that drives gets 60% of the range less in the wintertime because of the temperature in our hills, and we don't have the infrastructure to charge the cars. I trade in more electric cars for people that are done with them and sell them a hybrid or a gas car than I sell. And I'm agnostic. I don't care what the customer wants to buy. It does not matter to me. But we are regulating what people's choices should be instead of making it convenient for people to actually be able to charge their vehicles, putting infrastructure and making it convenient. You don't have that here. What, there's 2 charging stations with 3 in Bennington and 1 of them doesn't work? There's 1 in Manchester and like 4 in Rutland? Go to Rutland or anywhere on a Saturday, on a ski weekend, the line to charge is 3 hours.
Vermont Country Store has a whole line of them.
You can't do that. We're putting the cart before the horse. I love electric cars, but I can't drive one because I drive too much. I tried it for a week and ran out of battery on Route 7. And I own a dealership.
All right. Do you want to pass it?
I just want to point out that we are adding, we have $21 million from the NEVI funds, the federal
feet, 6 or 12 there. So it's not ideal, but it's not like we're not aware of the problem. We are trying to lay down the foundation. And then you get private developers, you have Tesla and Dunkin' Donuts, over there. So they are popping up, and obviously we have ways to go. But it's not like we're not ignoring that problem. We are.
I want to make sure we capture everybody that we can in a little bit that time. Assistant Town Manager of Bennington, Shannon, I do want to pass it to you, and then I do want to honor Sean Marie, and then I see Representative Pincino over here. So, that's how we're going to do it.
I'll just stand up to see everybody. Hey, thank you to all of our legislators for being here. I just wanted to echo what the state said, and it's not really a question, it's just a comment. This is more from a municipal perspective. I work in community and economic development for the town, and with our permitting department, we have multiple huge transformational projects happening in Bennington. We've got the Everett Estate, former Summer College, we've got Ben High, we've got the old Bradford Milbury redevelopment, we have Pleasant Phase 2, we've got the Energizer. It's a really exciting time. Every single one of these projects, we have had to literally fight the state to try and get some kind of permitting moving forward, whether it's through natural resources, part of environmental conservation. And I think about it from our perspective, like if you came to the town of Bennington and you apply for a permit, we have 30 days to give you that permit, literally. And I've had situations at the state level where it's been 3 months and we still don't have an answer, or when the answer will come back, it's like, well, actually we have this one other thing. And I think part of the problem is a lot of these agencies are seeing themselves more as regulators than as facilitators, right? We want to get to yes every single time, right? We want to get to yes, and we want to protect our environment. That's why a lot of us live here, but it's just the regulatory environment is just impossible, and we have to figure it out. And I think one thing that could help is if we look at these big projects as priority projects for each county, and really, let's get them done. Let's try to fast track that process. We're talking about areas that have already been built. They're being built over a parking lot, right, at the old Greenbergs. They're being built in an old factory. Like, we don't need to recreate the wheel here. So I just want to reiterate that I have seen this now over the last 7 years, how difficult it is. And these are private investors that are coming into our community and investing. So I just think we have to do better.
Well, I also want to echo thank you for everyone coming in and giving reports. This actually was a comment for Mike Nigro. The last construction project that was paid for by the state was our middle school, and it took, 3 years. We had to flip the building around, the Act 250, we had the wetlands, we had to build a sidewalk all the way downtown, but it's there, and I can't believe it's actually just over 20 years, but that's was the last 30% construction project for a school that was done in the state of Vermont. So it's been a while.
Great, thank you.
That's how old and how deep.
I just wondered if Representative Corcoran could talk about why it's important that the 1.9 come out of the purchase and use tax, come out of the education, farming, and into transportation, with its tenfold reinvestment in the federal government. I think it's important to understand why it needs to go back where it belongs.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge, any budget that you put together, the toughest piece of putting that transportation budget together is the state funds, because usually the federal money will be there. And in order to draw down those federal dollars, obviously we need that state match, and those federal dollars will turn into like a 4 to 1, 5 to 1 ratio here. For an example, if you're doing an interstate, even though we don't have an interstate inside the state, but that's like a 90% federal, 10% state. So you're going to be able to draw a lot more federal monies down to, address our infrastructure. And without those dollars, either we're just going to leave federal money on the table, or we're going to have to find a different revenue source to make that up. And like I said, you can index a gas tax, local option tax,
delivery fee, tax on tires. I don't think those are going anywhere. But, you know, we just got to think out of the box of how you offset declining gas revenue, because it is going down with more efficient vehicles or electric vehicles. So the writing's on the wall, but that's not a sustainable fund. But in the meantime, to claw back that 50 million is critical to keep us whole, you know, or at least keep us plugging along, you know, for the bottom totally drops out, because it's, like I said, we're paving 50% of the roads that we should be paving. The municipalities will tell you they're getting a third of their requests for grants. It's not good, you know. So something's going to have to be done. The problem is not playing politics. The administration is pretty clear that no new revenue is going to be on the table.
Do we have time for one or two more? Jim Tremarchi?
Yeah, I mean, I want to go back to Jose a little bit on this, in that the Vermont Futures Project put out a dashboard, and the current population in Vermont is 640,000. They're targeting by 2035, by 2035, 800,000. They want to have the population be 800,000, which sounds like a great target. Well, let's just look at it for a second. From 2015 to 2025, the population grew at 3.64%. To get from 640 to 800,000, that's a 24% increase over the next decade. So for a decade, it grew at 3.56%. The next decade is going to grow at 24%. If we're going to do that, which according to them, according to economics and everything, we have to basically grow a population of that scale in order to do it. If we're going to do it, we have to address another item in the Vermont Futures Project dashboard, which is the affordability of Vermont. So Vermont is ranked at 1.11. So just nationally, it's 1.0, 1.11 means that we're basically 11% more expensive than other states. So we have to get Vermont to be more affordable if we're going to attract people to Vermont. So that's got to be the number one issue. I mean, I love the fact that John Finley now has this, but it needs to be the number one issue with all of the committees is the affordability of Vermont. How do we continue to provide what Vermont has, which is so wonderful, but do it in a way that's and healthcare, I'm Southwest Vermont healthcare. Healthcare is one of the challenges, undoubtedly. And SVMC is leaning into that affordability issue. But we have barriers. So for example, many of you know, if you move to this area, there's the struggle of getting a primary care provider. Why? Because we're just not minting enough nationally, right? But what we are minting nationally is AI doctors. Right now, some of the AI doctors are actually better at low acuity stuff than actually real doctors. But in Vermont, an AI bot cannot prescribe in Vermont. It would be wonderful. It would free up access to our primary care providers if Vermont would pass a law like Utah did. Utah just passed it, went into effect in January, to allow AI bots to prescribe for reoccurring medications. So if you go back and you need a refill, have an AI bot do it. So that would be my pitch, an idea for the legislature to contemplate. Think about using AI bots as a way to lower the cost of the expenses in Vermont.
And fear on my taxes at the same time.
Yeah, taxes.
I'm one of the few businesses who paid monthly and put $1 million into building industrial and it's going to sound a little weird because I'm a business owner. I want to be clear, deregulation is different from regulatory reform. I'm not a big deregulation person because I know what happens. Deregulation means you just do away with the law. If you don't want that, come to New York City, trust me. It's the law. But what we do need is regulatory responsiveness. We finished everything and said for 4 months and could not get a permit because state called the agency and they were like, oh, you know, we need you to come here, but we're just not ready for it. That's regulatory responsiveness is what we need. And I'm accustomed to it. And I called around and some of the legislators might have done, for me. Because I tried to get help from anybody. Can you call someone and tell them, can you send an inspector down so I can open it? and I didn't get a response. And I sat there thinking, I'm not from here. I came from New York City to go create a business, to anchor a regional business, not just in Vermont. We're serving the entire Northeast from Bennington. I thought that would be enough if somebody said, hey, we've been on the phone to get this open. So I'm just saying, you don't have to do away with the laws, just streamline. If you prioritize business and you pick up the phone and say, I'm a business owner, I will get to the administrator and make sure they respond to you.
Share with us your business.
We have the new water cremation facility in the Old County factory. So we are the only dedicated water cremation facility in the Northeast. There are two, there's a funeral home upstate that does it, there's a funeral home in Connecticut. So we're not a funeral home, we serve everybody. And we are bringing customers from New York City, from Maryland, up to Bennington to do this business. So we just, you now have a third option. If you don't want to bury and you don't want to set your loved one on fire, you can cremate using water instead. It's gentler on the remains, it's more environmentally responsible. It's just a kinder way to treat cremate. I did this because I didn't want to set my loved ones on fire and I knew other people wouldn't want to either. There are a ton of people who just don't know what it is. But you can now get it done locally and it's beneficial to the sewer system. It's everything that you want environmentally. So we're open now. I'm glad to be open. But to the point about regulation, it was just, I was shocked that you're making phone calls and let up. Okay, we'll get to you. If that's the answer, no. You won't get people to compromise with techniques.
Thank you, Candace. That's a great place to end. I do want to pass it to Will, Representative Greer, but I think that's a really nice way to kind of end it. But Will you finish us up?
And I think, well, as I said, I think this might finish it up well. So you said you contacted legislators. Okay, so I did not receive that, but I just want to say if you cannot contact us and we don't respond quickly, usually I think we get it in our boxes. Matt, would you send anything along like that to us so that we can call someone?
Yeah, and I think that absolutely happens. Yeah, and that's honestly one of the better, one of the good strengths of this community in this county. You have a chamber that serves you regardless if you're a member or not. You can absolutely call us up, but I also know town officials as well, both here in Manchester and throughout. That I do think is a lot of the strength, especially in this county, is why we have so many great projects moving here in Bennington and some up in Manchester as well, is how much we care about the community. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Your representatives and your senators are here to hear you. I know they are very responsive to their email. Again, if you can't get through to them, bother one of us. We're happy to go bother your representatives and senators. But more than anything, please be safe out there. Thank you for joining us this Monday. A round of applause for our representatives.